Do you only feel your glutes, hamstrings, and adductors when you do squats? Not your quads at all? Well, they're probably not the best quad building exercise for you, but if you make a couple of these adjustments to your technique, you can start to bias a squat to building bigger quads. You ready? Let's feel those puppies work. Okay, so the first thing to understand with your squat, right? Most people end up feeling their glutes, hamstrings, and quads and build a lot more ass than they do quad. And the reason is, it's how they set up. First, if you're used to pushing weight from sports, I grew up playing football, track and field, it was all about getting stronger. We would typically do a low bar squat, so the bar sits quite a bit lower. You can see I'm actually rolling it down right now. And then the feet are going to be quite a bit wider. So I'm outside shoulder width, toes are pointed out about 45 degrees, and knees go out. And so when we drop into a squat like this, we have a vertical shin. A vertical shin is a good thing if you have knee pain, but it's not great for quad development. This way, when we're squatting, it's really going to bias towards the adductors, lower back, glutes, and hamstrings. And so, you might be able to push more weight that way, but just getting stronger in a squat, if you're doing it in that technique, is not necessarily going to build bigger quads. We have to take a slightly different approach. As mentioned, when we use that wider stance with the toes out, that's going to bias, it's going to recruit the glutes more, hamstrings, adductors, all of these things. Not a bad thing, but just not ideal for quad development. So what we need to do is get out of having that vertical shin. So vertical shin, what I mean is, when you're squatting, your shin is like this, to having more knees over toes. Knees over toes is going to force quads to contract much harder. Sometimes the limiting factor though is ankle dorsiflexion and ankle mobility. We'll talk about that in a second. But it's going to be a different setup. We have to go with a high bar. Feet are going to be more narrow and more straightforward. This way, the knees can actually travel directly over the toes, putting more tension directly on the quads. Here's what it looks like. Cool, so high bar sits quite a bit higher. Feet, you can tell right here, are going to be more narrow. Toes out, 15 degrees tops. And when I drop into my squat, I'm breaking at the knees and the hips simultaneously. And so from the side view, you can really tell the difference here in terms of the angle. So this, more quad focused. This is going to be more hamstring, glutes, lower back focused. With the wide stance, what you'll see is I can push my knees out and my shins stay vertical. Great for building your hamstrings and your adductors, not as good for your quads. Now if you want to bias towards the quads, feet are more narrow, knees actively go over the toes. This is what really pulls those quads in and makes it a more effective muscle building exercise. Now what I have here is a wedge, more specifically the Woof wedge. Great product, highly recommended. That said, what these are very popular for is these help get your ankles to go over, or your knees to go over your toes more effectively. And a lot of people have limited ankle dorsiflexion, and dorsiflexion, so this is plantar flexion, dorsiflexion is how high you can pull that toe up. And that creates restrictions in terms of how deep they can squat. So for example, if you do a squat and your feet or your heels are coming up off the ground, it's because you have poor ankle dorsiflexion, leading to a lot of issues. So when we use something, the wedge allows us to get that ankle movement, the ankle dorsiflexion in place, and then the knees go over the toes that much more effectively. So as you can see, a squat isn't just a squat. The way that we do it is going to change what exercises we are biasing towards. A lot of people do not grow their quads very well in squats because they're doing more of a hip-dominant squat. So if we want to make our squat more squatty, we have to bring our feet in a little bit, toes out 15 degrees, and focus on pushing those knees over the toes. The only downside for some people, they don't have adequate ankle dorsiflexion, which means you might need to use something like a wedge or even an elevated heel shoe. And other people, they might deal with more anterior knee pain, and therefore they're going to make their squat a little bit more focused on the glutes and hamstrings. Not wrong, but you might have to fill in the gaps with the rest of your training with more isolation work if you really want to build your quads. Personally, that's been my issue. I've had knee pain for a long time, so if I do a ton of squats with that high bar position, pushing the knees over the toes, I can typically run into a few issues. So my squat typically happens to be more lower back, quad, hamstring, glute, all that stuff, right? And so it just comes down to how you do the exercise and how effectively you want to target an individual muscle. If you want to be able to feel more muscles contract, whether it's stubborn arms, lats, chest, whatever it is, make sure you check out the rest of this playlist covering how to feel your muscles contract so you can look great naked without living in the gym. I'll catch you on the next one.